to pronouns. Just like subject-verb agreement, pronouns are extremely important on the test. They are very common. You will see several questions on every single SAT testing pronouns. First of all, what is a pronoun? A pronoun is simply a word that refers to or takes the place of a noun. You can see some examples of pronouns down here. Let's take a look at a pronoun in action in example 1. First, let me go ahead and highlight this here. I would suggest highlighting that as well. In example 1, read it all the way through, and what I need to know from you is to what noun does the pronoun it refer to or take the place of. So in example 1, we have the storm was ferocious, but surfers nevertheless took advantage of the large waves it created. So what created the large waves in this sentence? Obviously it was the storm. So the storm is the noun, it is the pronoun, and it is taking the place of or referring to that noun, storm. So that's an example of a pronoun and what a pronoun does. Now the tip-off clue for pronouns, I will give you one guess what the part of speech is that indicates that a pronoun rule might be being tested. Give up? Okay, it's underlined pronouns. Underlined pronouns. So that is your overall tip-off clue for pronoun rules, underlined pronouns. If you see a pronoun underlined, and again, here's some examples of pronouns. If you see an underlined pronoun, there's 3 rules that you're going to need to check. Let's jot them down now. Reference, agreement, and case. R-A-C, the pronoun rack, I guess. So the first of our pronoun rules, pronoun reference, we have to make sure when we see a pronoun in a sentence that the pronoun clearly refers to a noun, that it's linked to a noun, that there's a specific noun in the sentence that the pronoun replaces. If we see a pronoun and we look for the noun that the pronoun replaces or refers to, and we don't see that noun, we have a pronoun reference or ambiguity error. So the question associated with this rule, the question you're going to need to ask yourself is, does the pronoun that I am seeing in the sentence, the underlined pronoun that I'm seeing, does it refer clearly to a specific noun in the sentence? If it does, great, no problem. If it doesn't, you may have a pronoun reference error. Down at the bottom of the page, examples 2, 3, and 4, in each of these questions, you're going to see a pronoun underlined. What you need to do is determine if the pronoun, the underlined pronoun, has a clear noun reference. If the pronoun does have a reference, great, leave it alone. If not, cross off the pronoun, and right above the pronoun, jot down what you think the pronoun was supposed to be referring to. Pause the video if you want to do 2, 3, and 4 on your own now. Okay, example 2, we have the journalist noted that in the most recent article, they reported incorrect financial data. So obviously the they is your pronoun. You have to ask yourself, does that they refer clearly to a noun in the sentence? And the answer is, of course, no, it does not. There's no plural noun to which this they could refer. So we would have to assume that the they was referring to the authors of the article, maybe the editors of the article, maybe the newspaper reported the incorrect financial data. The bottom line is we have no idea to whom the they refers, and therefore that they is an unreferenced or ambiguous pronoun. In example 3, Marissa wanted to celebrate with her sister after she passed the exam. Many of you may have just assumed that the she refers to Marissa, and Marissa's all excited and she wants to celebrate with her sister because Marissa passed the exam. But actually, this she does not have a clear single noun reference. This she could actually refer to her sister or to Marissa. Marissa could have wanted to celebrate because Marissa passed the exam, or Marissa could have wanted to celebrate because her sister passed the exam. So this she is not clearly referenced to a single noun in the sentence. The change that I'm going to write here is I'm just going to write Marissa slash her sister question mark. We don't know if that she refers to Marissa or her sister. Somebody passed the exam. Marissa wants to celebrate, but that's pretty much all we know. Example 4, animals that hibernate prepare for it by eating large amounts of food. So when you see this it, a lot of students say, well, what does the it refer to? And the answer is obviously hibernation. And then students look here and they see hibernate and they say, great, so that it has a clear reference. It refers to hibernate. However, remember that pronouns replace nouns. They do not replace any other part of speech. Hibernate in this sentence is actually a verb. So although we know that the it refers to the noun form of that verb, the it refers to hibernation, we can't have the it referring to hibernate itself. So what we would need to do is we would need to cross off this it. We would need to write hibernation, or we could even write winter, something like that. That it needs a clear noun reference, which it right now does not have. That is it for pronoun reference. Again, remember, you see a pronoun underlined, you have to ask yourself, does that pronoun refer clearly to a specific noun? If the pronoun does refer to a specific noun, great, you got no problem. If it doesn't, you may have a pronoun reference error. Our second pronoun issue that might arise is pronoun agreement. You will, if you have done subject-verb agreement, you may remember that subject-verb agreement dealt with agreement in number. In other words, singular versus plural. Pronoun agreement is no exception. Pronoun agreement does deal with making sure that your pronouns and the nouns that they replace agree in number. In other words, if the pronoun is singular, the noun has to be singular. If the noun is plural, the pronoun has to be plural. They have to match each other in number. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the rule up here. Pronoun and the noun the pronoun replaces don't agree. So that's when we get a pronoun agreement error. Now, so the second question you need to ask yourself is the pronoun agreement question. Once you have determined that the pronoun has a clear reference, remember that's what we did back in pronoun reference, you then need to make sure that the pronoun agrees with the noun that it refers to or replaces. Take a look at example 1. Go ahead and do it on your own, and basically what you're doing is determining if that underlined pronoun there agrees with the noun it replaces. So in example 1, the museum houses a large portion of their collection in an underground vault. We need to ask ourselves who that there is referring to. In other words, whose collection are we talking about? And of course, we are talking about the museum's collection. So we have the museum, that's our noun. That's the noun that the pronoun there replaces. We have the there, that's the pronoun. And now that we know that the there has a clear noun reference, we need to see if this noun and this pronoun agree. This noun is singular. This pronoun is plural. That would indicate a lack of agreement. So what would we do here to fix this error? We would cross off there. We would replace the there with its. Its is the singular pronoun that now refers to the singular noun museum. That is pronoun agreement. Now there are a couple of variations of this rule that you'll need to know about. First, we've got to revisit the enobs. We talked about the enobs in subject-verb agreement. If you want to pause the video now and see if you can remember them, great. I'm going to go ahead and shout them out. The enobs were each, either, neither, ones, and bodies. Yes, bodies is not spelled like that, but remember, if you did this in subject-verb agreement, you know what I'm talking about. So the ones in the bodies are these words: someone, somebody, anyone, anybody, no one, nobody, everyone, everybody. Words that end in one or body. The enobs are always singular. So just like in subject-verb agreement, where when we had an enob that was the subject of a sentence, if we have an enob that a pronoun is referring to, then that pronoun needs to be singular because the enob that the pronoun is referring to is singular. So in examples 2, 3, and 4, you're going to see an underlined pronoun. You're going to find the enob that the underlined pronoun is referring to, and then you are going to determine if the underlined pronoun needs to be singular or plural, but it should be fairly straightforward since I just told you that all the enobs were singular. Do examples 2, 3, and 4. In example 2, you probably should still be bracketing separators here. Although the separators play mainly into subject-verb agreement, they also can help you find the noun that your pronoun is referring to. In this sentence, we have each of the tiny fish ate many times their/its weight in food every day, but this sentence can be distilled down to each ate many times blank weight. So the reference, the pronoun here, their/its, is referring obviously to this enob each, and since that enob each is singular, we need the singular pronoun here, its. Each ate many times its weight. Example 3, anybody can learn to play the piano if blank willing to practice every day. So again, we have this anybody. That is one of our enobs, one of the bodies. And therefore, we need a singular pronoun to refer to that anybody. So anybody can learn to play the piano if he or she is willing to practice every day. Again, he or she, singular pronouns, referring to the singular enob, anybody. In example 4, we start off the sentence with a prepositional phrase. We'll bracket that. We have another prepositional phrase here. So the sentence boils down to neither could remember his/their lines. Well, remember, neither is an enob, and we need a singular pronoun because the enob is singular. So this should be neither of the boys could remember his lines. Once again, enobs are always singular. If you see a pronoun referring to an enob, that pronoun must also be singular in order to agree with the enob. Collective nouns, we also saw collective nouns in subject-verb agreement, and what did we learn about them there? We learned that they, like the enobs, are always singular. So the collective nouns, remember, they're just nouns that name a group of people or things, like the family, the group, the jury, the audience, the team, and these nouns are always singular on the SAT. If we have a pronoun referring to a collective noun, that pronoun must also be singular. Example 5, press pause, do it on your own. Example 5, Coach Halloran was fired after leading the team to one of its/their worst seasons ever. So whose worst season are we talking about? Who does that worst season belong to? In other words, to what noun does this pronoun refer? The pronoun refers to team. This is the team's worst season ever. Because the team is one of those collective nouns, and we know that collective nouns are always singular, we need the singular its to refer back to the team. So again, enobs always singular, collective nouns always singular. That's basically it for pronoun agreement. By the way, pronoun agreement is the most common of the 3 pronoun rules. Reference, agreement, case. Agreement tends to be the most common. The third pronoun rule, pronoun case. This one can sometimes be the trickiest of the 3 for students. So remember the first things you have to do when you see a pronoun underlined. Find the noun that the pronoun refers to. That's your first goal. Second goal, Make sure that the pronoun and the noun agree in number. If one is singular, other is singular. If one is plural, other has to be plural. The third thing that you're going to need to ask yourself when you see a pronoun underlined, all right, I'm going to try really hard to make this highlight straight. Not too bad. Not too bad. The third question that you need to ask yourself is, does the pronoun have the correct form or case? Take a look at example 6. Read it to yourself. Press pause if you need to. In this example, the speaker of this sentence refers to, we'll call her a she. Refers to herself 3 times with 3 different pronouns. I prefer tuna, to salmon, but Mom forced me to order the salmon, which my sister then ate. So we have 1, 2, 3 different pronouns, all referring to the speaker of this sentence, and yet the 3 pronouns are in different forms, or, as we call them, pronoun cases. The question is, why is that? Why do we have to jump from one form to another? Why can't we say, I prefer tuna, but Mom forced I to order the salmon, which I, sister, then ate? Well, number one, that would sound really weird, but there are actual rules that govern what form of a pronoun we have to use. This first pronoun, I, is the subject of this verb prefer. I prefer. The second pronoun, me, is actually the object of this verb forced. The me is receiving the action of that verb forced. Somebody is being forced here. It is the me being forced. So again, the I is the subject of the verb prefer. The me is the object of the verb forced. And then what is my doing? This is usually the simplest one of the 3. My is showing possession or ownership of this word sister. The sister belongs to the speaker of the sentence. These indeed are the 3 pronoun cases, the pronoun forms. We have a subject form, that would be I in this case. We have an object form, that would be me in this case. And we have a possessive form, that would be my. That's what we're talking about when we talk about pronoun form or case. We're talking about making sure that depending upon how the pronoun is being used, if it's being used as a subject or an object or to show possession, we have to make sure that we have the right form of the pronoun. So, in terms of the forms or cases, the forms or cases have to do with, like I said, the function of the pronoun in the sentence. So the 3 forms or cases are subject form or subjective form, object or objective form, and possessive form. And of course, the subjective form is used when the pronoun is the, can you guess, subject of a verb. The objective form is used when the pronoun is the direct object or object of a preposition. Remember that the direct object is object of a verb. Object of a preposition is the noun that comes after a preposition. If you have done subject-verb agreement, you should be familiar with objects of prepositions. And then the possessive case is used when the pronoun shows, tricky one, possession. So again, subject case, object case, possessive case. These 3 little constructs here, these 3 examples should show you how this all works. If we consider the pronoun he, for instance, and we are thinking, well, which form of that pronoun do we put into this blank? We would indeed say he. He kicked the ball. But here, we wouldn't say the horse kicked he, we would say the horse kicked him. Kick the ball to he? No, we would say kick the ball to him. That is he horse? No, that is his horse. So depending upon how you're using the pronoun, whether it's the subject, the object or showing possession, that pronoun's form is going to change depending upon the pronoun's function. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fill in all of these little cells here. If you feel that you can do this on your own, obviously pause the video and do so, and then check your work against what we have. So first person singular pronoun is I kicked the ball. The first person singular, sorry, that was the first person singular subject pronoun. The first person singular object pronoun would be me. The horse kicked me, kicked the ball to me. That is my horse. Don't touch it. It's mine. Second person singular subject pronoun would be you, and the you stays the same in the object form. The horse kicked you, kicked the ball to you. And then in the possessive form, we have that is your horse. Third person singular subject, we've got three of them. We have he, we have she, we have it. And then going across, the horse kicked, again, the horse kicked him, the horse kicked her, the horse kicked it. And then in the possession column, we have that is his horse, that is her horse, that is its horse. I guess the horse could belong to another animal. Now, in the first person plural subject case, we have we. We kicked the ball. The horse kicked us would be the object form, and that is our horse would be the possessive form. Second person plural subject, again, is you, and you stays exactly the same as it did in the singular forms, you, your. And then finally we have third person plural subject, which would be they. They kicked the ball, the horse kicked them, and that is their, T-H-E-I-R, is the possessive form of that third person plural pronoun. Those are pretty much all of the pronouns you're going to need to know. Now, the question is, how will ETS test pronoun case on the SAT? Well, take a look at example 7. Me prefer tuna to salmon, but mom forced I to order the salmon, which me, sister, then ate. That is not how ETS is going to test this rule, because every student in his or her right mind would know that these pronouns are not correct. Me prefer tuna to salmon is not something that most students will fall for. So what ETS will do is they're going to be a little bit trickier with pronoun case errors on the SAT. They're going to hide case errors with distractors. What distractors do is make it extremely difficult for you to detect the pronoun case error just by using your ear, which is why you are going to want to follow this key here. We're going to go ahead and write down cross off pronoun distractors, and then it is safe to use your ear. Remember that generally on this test, using your ear can get you into some trouble on many rules. Pronoun case is one of those rules where ETS knows that they need to make it very difficult for you to hear the error in order to make the test a little bit more difficult, a little trickier. However, if you learn to spot the following distractors and you learn to cross them off, you actually can use your ear to, or I should say rely on your ear to tell you whether you have a pronoun case error or not. So the tip-off clue for a pronoun distractor will be if you see a name / noun / pronoun, a name, a noun, or pronoun plus the word or the conjunction and. So a name, a noun, or a pronoun plus and. What you want to do is you want to cross off those pronoun distractors. You want to read the sentence without the distractor, and a lot of times reading the sentence without the distractor, your ear will be able to detect the error. Examples 1, 2, and 3, you can go ahead and do them on your own now. So in example 1, if you read this sentence as the sentence is offered to you, Jaden showed Marnie and I the most recent photos. Most students would not have too much of a problem with that. If somebody came up to you and said, Jaden showed Marnie and I the most recent photos, you probably would not detect any grammatical mistake. However, if you obliterate this name and distractor, you have a name, you have the word and, you obliterate that name and then you read the sentence again, Jaden showed I the most recent photos. Most of you will be able to detect, just using your ear, that that pronoun form is not correct. The pronoun form I, which is the subject pronoun, is not appropriate here. We need the object pronoun me. Jaden showed me the most recent photos, not Jaden showed I. So again, we crossed off the name and distractor. We read the sentence without the name and distractor, and the correct pronoun form became pretty obvious. Next, example 2, we are going to cross off, well, let's read the sentence with everything intact first. The dogs and him recently hiked the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. The dogs and him recently hiked the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. Sounds pretty okay, but as soon as we get rid of the noun and distractor, him recently hiked the trail, that doesn't make any sense. We have the object form him, where we actually need the subject form he. He recently hiked the entire length of the trail. So again, we crossed off the distractor, and our ears led us to the right pronoun case. Example 3, Dad was disappointed that you and me simply cannot agree on a solution. Again, if somebody said that to you, probably wouldn't have too much of an issue with that sentence. But if we cross off this pronoun and, so there's our third type of distractor, our third variation of this distractor, pronoun plus and. If we cross off the you and we reread the sentence, Dad was disappointed that me simply cannot agree, that doesn't sound right. We need the I here, not the me. Dad was disappointed that I simply cannot agree. So again, most pronoun case errors on the SAT can be handled in this way, by crossing off a distractor and then using your ear to lead you to the right case. If you are going for an extremely high writing score, however, if you're going for, let's say, 700 or above, you probably are going to need to know a little bit more about some of these pronoun cases. So some of the trickier things that ETS can do, that's what we're going to discuss right now. In terms of subject pronouns, one of the things that ETS can do is the following. The tip-off clue for this particular variation would be the words than, / like, / as, / forms of to be. Than, like, as, forms of to be. Those words or phrases are the tip-off clues for this particular variation, and the rule here is that after these tip-offs, use a subject pronoun. If you want to take a stab at 4 and 5 on your own, go ahead and do so now. In number 4, example number 4, although I won the match, my opponent was clearly more athletic than me / I. Most of the time, if you are speaking or you're listening to somebody speak, you would probably hear something like, my opponent was clearly more athletic than me. That, unfortunately, is not correct. What you need to do is apply the rule that we just discussed. We see a than before the pronoun, and we said that after that tip-off, the then, we have to use the subject pronoun. Me is the object pronoun. I is the subject pronoun. We need an I here. My opponent was clearly more athletic than I. Now, I would suggest just memorizing this rule that after than, like, as, or forms of to be, you have to use a subject pronoun. If you want to know why we're supposed to be using a subject pronoun, it is because there is actually an unwritten, an implied but unwritten verb at the end of this sentence after the I. This sentence is actually saying my opponent was clearly more athletic than I am athletic. So that I is the subject. Remember that I is the subject form of the pronoun. That I is the subject of that unwritten verb am. My opponent was clearly more athletic than me am obviously would not sound correct. When you actually put the verb at the end of the sentence, you can see why the object form of the pronoun is not suitable. Example 5, Reginald was told to return the wallet, but it was not he/him who had stolen it. So note what we have here. We have a form of to be. By the way, the forms of to be would be words like, most of you should know this, but I know some of you might have been wondering, was, were, are, is, has/have been, will be. Those are all forms of the verb to be. In example 5, we indeed have was, which is a form of to be. Remember what the rule said. We have to use a subject pronoun after form of to be. He is the subject pronoun. Him is the object pronoun. We have to use he here. It was not he who had stolen it. Might sound weird to some of your ears, but indeed the he is the necessary case here. A bit more on object pronouns. The tip-off clue here is simply prepositions. And the rule is use an object pronoun after a preposition. Now, you might be wondering why we are repeating this, because we just told you a page or two ago that we use the object pronoun when we have a pronoun that is an object of a preposition. So yes, this is slightly redundant. It's just to re-emphasize the fact that when you see a preposition and you see a pronoun after that preposition is the object of the preposition, and therefore we need an object pronoun. However, there is one preposition that ETS loves to use that is not so amenable to the crossing off distractors and using your ear technique that we just discussed. So remember, we just said that if we see a name/noun/pronoun plus and, we should cross off that distractor and use our ears. The preposition between can cause some issues for students, because if I were to cross off the name and distractor here, the David and distractor, and reread this, I asked Lara to sit between I so she could tell us about her internship. I asked Lara to sit between me so she could tell us about her internship. Both of those sound a little bit weird because the preposition between requires two words, two nouns after it. You don't say sit between me. That would be very strange. So in this case, your ear might fail you. You might think that both I and me sound a little bit weird, which is why it helps to know that after a preposition, you always need the object pronoun. If you can then determine that I is the subject pronoun, me is the object pronoun, you would know that you need me in this case. Now, some of you might be sitting there saying that when you say between I or between me, you might think that between me sounds vastly better, and that's fine. To some people it does, but to a lot of students it does not, and you may need to fall back on the after a preposition, use an object pronoun rule. Example 7, this one you can do actually either way. You can do it with the cross off and use your ear. You could do it with preposition, use object after preposition. Either way, the cross off would look like this. You will leave too little for her. So that's your ear giving you the answer. And if you want to go based on the preposition rule, remember for is a preposition. The noun and the pronoun after that preposition are the objects. Therefore, you need the object form, not the subject form of the female pronoun there. So a bit more on possession pronouns. Again, this is a very rare rule. Probably will never see this come up on the SAT, but if you want a extremely good score, you probably are going to want to know this. The tip-off clue is ing words. Ing words. If you see an ing word, the rule is use a possessive pronoun before an ing. Ran out of room there, sorry. Use a possessive pronoun before an ing. So if you see an ing word in a sentence and you see that the ing word is preceded by a pronoun, what you need to do is you need to use the possessive form of the pronoun. So in example 8, if you want to try it on your own, press pause and try it. The manager said that us using the pool after hours. The manager said that our using the pool after hours. Because we have an ing after the pronoun, we need to use the possessive form here, not the objective form. Again, very, very rarely tested on the SAT, but it does show up every now and then. If you want to push your score as high as possible, I would know that rule. Examples 9 through 13. We are testing all of the pronoun cases here. Go ahead and do all of these examples. Remember to cross off any pronoun distractors that you see, and there are several of them in these examples. Press pause, try them on your own, then rejoin us. Example 9, Mom suspected that the cake Marissa had bought for Allie and I/me had peanuts in it. We're going to cross off the Allie and, the name and distractor. Mom suspected that the cake Marissa had bought for me had peanuts in it. So that is we need the object form of that pronoun, not the subject form. In the next example, my mom asked Marissa why she bought a cake that my sister and I/me would not be able to eat. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to cross off the name and distractor. My mom asked Marissa why she bought a cake that me would not be able to eat. No, why she bought a cake that I would not be able to eat. So here we need the subject form, not the object form. Example 11, our parents are constantly baffled by the stark contrast between, there's that tricky preposition I told you about earlier, between my brother and I/me when it comes to study habits. Because we have this preposition between, remember what we said, we always want to use the object form of the pronoun after a preposition. You can cross off the my brother and, you can cross off that distractor, but your ear might fail you. So we need the object form me, not the subject form I in this case. Example number 12, although Dennis Rodman is best known for his off-court antics, few players were as good as he/him at rebounding. Well, we said that after than, like, as, or forms of to be, we needed to use a subject pronoun. Needed to use a subject pronoun, not an object pronoun. Few players were as good as he at rebounding. Few players were as good as he was at rebounding. Example 13, Gina is my best friend, and I fiercely object to you/your spreading rumors about her. Well, remember what we said. When we have an ing after the pronoun, we are to use the possessive form. I fiercely object to your spreading rumors about her. That is it for pronoun case. So the three major pronoun rules, reference, agreement, and case, they will account for most of the pronoun issues that arise on the test. However, there are a few additional pronoun issues that you need to be aware of. The first one is the we, one, you switcheroo. So the we, one, you switcheroo, here is your tip-off clue. The tip-off clue is actually those three pronouns right there, we / one / you. If you see any of those pronouns, you need to make sure that the we, one, you switcheroo is not being given or violated. The rule is do not interchange these pronouns when they refer to the same noun. Do not interchange we, one, you when they refer to the same noun. So you may hear people say things like this quite commonly. If one wants to become a doctor, then you must study hard. I'm going to write that down. If one wants to become a doc, you must study hard. What that sentence is literally saying, as written, is that if some generic person, this one, wants to become a doctor, you have to study hard. If you study hard, that generic person is going to become a doctor. We don't want to do that because obviously that's nonsense. That's not what the intended meaning of the sentence was. We want to make sure that we're consistent with we, one, and you. Example 1, press pause, do it on your own. So in example 1, color blindness may handicap one in certain ways, but you can still function normally in most situations. Well, again, what we've done is we have switched from one to you in this sentence, and we don't want to do that because we're talking about the same person who's colorblind and who is still able to function normally in most situations. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this one to a you so that our pronouns are now consistent. You, we, one. Example 2, slight variation of the rule we just discussed. It's not exactly the same. Go ahead and try it on your own. In example 2, when people drive over the speed limit, we increase the risk of an accident. We've got people over here. We've got we here. These two groups of people refer to the same group of people, and therefore these two pronouns, or I should say this noun and this pronoun, should be consistent. We don't want to say when people drive over the speed limit, we increase the risk. We want to say when people drive over the speed limit, those people increase the risk of an accident. So we're going to use the pronoun they to refer to the people rather than we to refer to us, because it is not we who are increasing the risk of an accident. Finally, the second to last thing here, the relative pronouns. We are on page 28, by the way. Relative pronouns are who, which, and that. And actually those three words are your tip-off clues. Who / which / that. You should go ahead and write those down. Pretty much the only thing that we need to keep in mind about who, which, and that on the SAT is that these relative pronouns have to refer to specific types of nouns. Remember that nouns are person or people, place or places, and things. Thing or things. So the who, the which, and the that can only refer to specific types of nouns. The who refers to person / persons. The which refers to thing or things. And the that also is going to refer to thing or things. So again, if you see a who, a which, or a that on the SAT, you just have to make sure that the who, the which, the that is referring to a proper type of noun. Example 3, try it on your own. Example 3, bottom of page 28, Stella is one of the many acting teachers which helped to popularize the emotional memory technique developed by Stanislavski. We have this which here referring to teachers. Teachers are people. We said that which, that relative pronoun, could only refer to things. We need to get rid of this which, and we need to change the which to who, which is the relative pronoun that can refer to people. So Stella is one of the many acting teachers who helped to popularize blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much all you need to know about who, which, and that. And now, finally, we have on page 29 our last little pronoun issue, when versus where. The tip-off clue is when / where. And the rule, similar to who, which, and that, is that where and when have to refer to specific kinds of nouns. Where refers to place or location. When refers to a time. So in example 4, do it on your own. Example 4, the first decade of this century is notable as the period where / when text messaging became wildly popular. The when / where here is referring to period. Period is a time. We need the pronoun when. The first decade of this century is notable as the period when text messaging became wildly popular. You could have replaced when with in which. You could say the period in which text messaging became popular. That would be perfectly acceptable as well. That is all for pronouns. One more time, just like I said with subject-verb agreement, better make sure you know your pronouns well. They are very common on the test. You will see several pronoun issues on every single SAT. Remember the 3 main rules: pronoun reference. Does the pronoun refer clearly to a noun in the sentence? Pronoun agreement. Does the pronoun agree with the noun that the pronoun refers to? Pronoun case. Is the pronoun in the right form? Is it a subject? Is it an object? Is it showing possession? Those are your 3 main pronoun rules: reference, agreement, and case. But don't forget about the we, one, you switcheroo, the relative pronouns that have to refer to specific nouns, and when and where, which must refer to a place or a time respectively.